Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about a fall-like outbreak of cool air that will be spreading across predominantly the areas that are highlighted in blue across the map you see right now in front of your screen. If you live across the south, southwest, you will be mainly still stuck in above average temperatures. Same with the northwest of the United States and southwestern Canada and southeastern Canada, and along with in the south northeast. This cool lobe of air will mainly circulate around the Great Lakes before fading off into the future, but it will stick around for a good portion of, well, at least a foreseeable 10 to 15 days. There will be a few, I guess, intermediate warmer days out ahead of certain systems that could pump a little bit of warm air in some warm fronts, but predominantly this will be it will be occurring during the warmest time of the year, so it really might not even feel like July for many areas, and something more of September type weather. So let's start talking about this. I first want to show you though the 6 to 10 day outlook by the Climate Prediction Center. So this is like an agency that just makes temperature outlooks only for the U.S. Doesn't include Canada, unfortunately, since it's, well, in the U.S. government. I think it's federally sponsored or funded. Notice that, yeah, as I mentioned, across the south, it might not even be cooler, let alone, way above average. So, yeah, it's going to continue like hot, like it has been for a while, and you may be, thinking, wow, this video is definitely not accurate. Well, for your location, it unfortunately won't be affecting you, any folks that live there. And do note, though, for a good portion of the central and kind of even potentially eastern United States, it will remain cooler, along with a wetter pattern and drying out across the southwest. 8 to 14 outlooks, so longer. You can see that the cooler air does kind of dissipate, as I mentioned, or at least the confidence is a lot lower. But it could definitely remain cool. As we get closer in time, we will find out. So first off, this is the EPS. It is a conglomeration of the European ensembles from the European family, obviously, and you can see that overall, as an average look, this is what they show. So this is better than looking at one model, because one model may have some sort of crazy idea and just lead you astray with thinking that some incredible event is happening when in reality, well, it's just one crazy member. In this case, if all of them on average show a cooler than average pattern, especially anything under 100 200 hours is pretty much guaranteed. Do note that again, it stays warm across the coasts of both the United States and Canada, but in the central regions there is quite a bit of cooler air, and you can see that occasionally this does dip down further into the south. Potentially you could see next week on July 10th into Monday and Tuesday it could reach the southeast. Notice it kind of fades away from the Great Lakes, and as I mentioned, there will be a few days where it could be warmer, and that could be Monday and Tuesday of next week for the Great Lakes region, especially the southern and eastern Great Lakes region. But notice, and then another one kind of spills in, another little cool outbreak. Maybe not as cold, and I believe it would be as cold. It's just that these weather models, again, this is an ensemble kind of mashed together, or many models mashed together, so the confidence is just simply lower. So you can see that the colors are definitely still there. But yeah, I mean, unusual for July, especially the last few years. We've been, there obviously have been cooler outbreaks of cooler in July or summer. This is not something super unusual, but it's been persistent, this pattern of this cool air across the Great Lakes Midwest for much of the summer. I mean, yeah, like here in my area in Chicago, we really can't call it a hot summer. It's been, I dare to say, almost cooler than average. There have been a few hot days, but by no means nothing incredible. And do note that, again, according to the European, this could continue. Now, these ensembles go pretty far out, right? So you can see that the cool air does seem to start losing the battle and warm air starts overriding it. Again, that could be just model bias towards the warm side in the long range once it starts losing any sorts of real credibility. But I do believe that, it's very possible that we could be transitioning into warmer patterns, say into late July and August. There's no signs that the cool air will have to stay around, right? So this is definitely plausible. I wouldn't expect it to stay along, and even honestly, even if it did just through the 20th, that would already be a very, very prolonged cool pattern. GFS and its ensembles are actually a little bit less on the cool side, which is typically kind of what I would not expect. Obviously, it does show that cool air, but it's just not as potent as what the European shows. And yeah, typically, I remember from summer in the past, the GFS was always the one that showed these like crazy dips, and you can see it shows that within 100 hours most models agree with each other. But beyond that, it's maybe even less aggressive than the European, which again I find kind of interesting. Do note that again, it does show that first one fading into that second wave. Again, just like the European, shows less confidence and less of an anomaly with that second wave of cool air, and it does start showing its disintegration into the longer range, but quicker than what the European did. ended, potentially already gone within the 240-hour time period, while the European drags that cool air out across the central United States and the southern central Canada well into almost a 15-day range of the 384 hours. So that is definitely something we will have to keep an eye on for, and distinguish which model is has a better handle on it. So far, again, the European, I guess, is the better one. It's more reliable, less crazy with its ideas, even if in this case it is showing something a bit more more chaotic. So that is that from the model and ensembles. You can see that again, that the pattern is favoring like this cooler ridge in the center, kind of typically what you would see during like maybe a cooler winter that brings a lot of cold into the Midwest. But notice the pattern that accompanies this. Again, as I mentioned, it will be cool, or as I showed you, it will be cool, but briefly mentioned, it will also be wetter across a lot of these areas where that cool air resides. And so how will that play out? Well, this is exactly how it will play out. So you notice that the European for now still shows a pattern that is still slightly different. We did have that very strong cold front move through with some severe storms across the Midwest a few days ago. There will be continued activity. We have a lot of weather events going from west to east. If you recall, earlier on in the summer, there was a lot of activity across these areas. Kansas, Nebraska got some much needed rain for their drought-stricken areas, but it was called, I think, a Rex pattern. It's broken now, and you can see that there's big storms that are occurring across pretty far north into Canada. You can see even the 540 line occurring up there, so that's pretty, I would say not too unusual, but definitely not something you'd see on even every summer with such a big storm. 540 line indicating that, there's even some frosts up here. So it's a powerful system, and you can see that its cyclonic spin kind of drives a lot of this northwesterly flow into the United States, and there's a high pressure in the south here that also has its southeasterly flow. Or one that pumps warm air into the United States. So that's why the South and the Southwest and the East Coast are going to stay pretty warm, while here it's pretty cold. And where these two converge, there could actually be some good amounts of precipitation. Notice that there's a front right there with that system that kind of blasts through next Tuesday and Wednesday. And then these storms kind of are stuck in between these two high pressures and kind of traverse along this highway. Boom, some heavy rainstorms and what's not. And there's another one that takes a similar path a little bit further south, but again, very similar course. And that's why we could be stuck in this pattern for a little bit. We have a stubborn high pressure here, stubborn one towards the north, and it could be a little bit before that breaks. So the precipitation will be favored across that area where those two kind of merge, and you can see that that is pretty explicitly showed here. Further north, not too much. Further south, especially on the eastern flank, the western flank of this high pressure, there could be a lot of precipitation as well. And well into the northeast, but really dry across the west. Typical more what we have been seeing the past few years. This first part of the year was pretty wet across the west, something you would typically not see. GFS is another model that obviously I showed you in terms of its rainfall output for the next 240 hours. The same time frame the European goes out to is again favoring very similar scenario. You can see the rain kind of taking on, you could tell it's taking on its characteristic kind of like north. It starts off northwest and it goes southeast and then just east and then north and off to the north and east. And the next, if you add the rest of the hours that the GFS goes through, you can see that it seems that this pattern continues, and we just see higher amounts of rain across very similar areas, avoiding the southwest. So, that's why this cooler pattern could continue for a while, and a wet pattern for a lot of these other areas across the Midwest and whatnot, which isn't really bad. A lot of these areas kind of got stuck with a really dry spring because of all the moisture falling across the west. Now it's their turn to get some rain, and that's good. Midwest is, approaching its season where the corn, soybeans, and all these things are growing really quickly. They need a lot of water. We don't really want a drought here, and that's good. This will definitely alleviate some of those issues. So that is definitely that from the ensembles I wanted to show you. I'm not sure if I can show you. Yeah, I can. The precipitation anomaly. Okay, so this is basically showing us that's not an anomaly. I wanted to show you this. So whether where it's drier and wetter, and you can see that the European really favors kind of that Midwest region, Northeast, and dries out a lot of the South and Southwest here. So this will be a bit concerning, especially across Texas, where it has been very hot and the drought is still continuing, and that continued dry pattern won't be good. GFS or its ensemble shows something similar. You can see staying wet across the Great Lakes, the Northeast, Southeastern Canada, the Great Plains, Northern Great Plains, while towards the South it stays a bit drier in the Southwest as well. So this is definitely something we will have to keep an eye on for as well. Alright, that's basically it, guys, though. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.